take those chances. And when somebody else isn't going to do it, you can be the person to step up and do it. And that can be a challenge because, people be like, oh, he's such a try hard, or he's doing this or doing that. And peer pressure is a real thing, and that can affect you. But again, you just got to be willing to take that chance and do what you know is the right thing.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks Podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
One last thing before we get into today's episode. A lot of people ask how they can support the podcast. Well, I have a couple easy ways. The first way is just listen and subscribe. And another thing you can do is go follow the Roughnecks Podcast on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube as well. If you get something out of today's show, then do me a favor. Share it with a friend. If you really want to go above and beyond to support the podcast, then head over to roughneckspodcast.com and get you some of that merch. I appreciate all of the support, but let's get into today's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. This is episode 77, and we are getting closer to that Q&A Friday, which will be next Friday. So be sure to email your questions in to roughneckspodcast@gmail.com, and then listen to episode 80 next Friday and potentially hear your question answered. But we are here today with episode 77, and joining me today is none other than Mason Tomblin. What's up, Mason? Welcome to the Roughnecks Podcast.
What's up, Cole, man? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get on here and talk a little bit and see how you're doing. So thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. I've been wanting to get you on. You've definitely had, quite the experience with everything that you've gone through, like all the coaching, different coaches you've coached with and for and stuff. So just to kick off the episode, give the Roughnecks listeners a little background on who you are.
Yeah, man. So, as Cole said, my name is Mason Tomblin. I'm originally from Worcester, Ohio. It's about an hour and a half north of Columbus. I went to Ohio Wesleyan University, went there, graduated in 2017. So when I graduated, I got a volunteer coaching job, and that's kind of where my coaching journey began. Coach Watts at Ohio Wesleyan, the head coach there, hooked me up with a guy named Eric Kaler. But that was my first job at Miami. I was a volunteer for 10 months. And then when I left Miami in January of 2018, I went to Wayne State University up in Detroit, Michigan, and an Ohio Wesleyan guy that I played with, an Ohio Wesleyan alum, Shane Lacanaria, got me hooked up there. So then I was there for a brief, and it took me a little to think about if I would want to and things like that, because I always did want to, go back to Ohio Wesleyan and give back and coach guys that I played with and things of that nature. But nonetheless, obviously, I did accept that position, and I was there for 2 seasons, and that was March of 2018 until March of 2020. And then March 3rd of 2020 was my first day at Ohio University. I was hired as a linebackers graduate assistant. So I was in grad classes, had to take 4 of those a semester, and I was, coaching. I was there to coach. The graduate degree was really just a product of me wanting to coach. But nonetheless, I was there for 14 months. But the funny thing is obviously with COVID and the pandemic and whatnot, I actually was on staff there for 14 months, but I only spent about 6 months, 5 months in Athens because we were quarantined and I was at home and all that sort of stuff. So that was a bit of an interesting dynamic. And then I'll get a little more detailed here about how I got the job, just because it's an Ohio Wesleyan Connect, but it's a pretty interesting one. I was going to say, actually, at Ohio University, I got that job through the defensive line coach, whose name is Pete Germano. He just retired. This past season was his last one, but he is also an Ohio Wesleyan alum. So I got the Ohio University job from an Ohio Wesleyan guy as well. So then moving to Iowa State, there's a guy by the name Dion Broomfield, played at Iowa State, and he graduated in the December of 2013. So he came to Ohio Wesleyan and coached there for about 2 months. And then he got picked up by the Buffalo Bills and was on their practice squad and, that sort of stuff for a little while and had some time in the NFL. Then he came back to Ohio Wesleyan in the spring of my sophomore year. And he coached for maybe a month, maybe 3 weeks, and got a different job offer. I believe it was at Western Illinois or Indiana State. And he went out there and took that job. So I had known him probably for a combined of 2.5 months, maybe 3 months in total. When he left Ohio Wesleyan and I was just a sophomore, but I kept, fairly good contact with him and always, touched base with him and things. And he had gotten hired at Iowa State right before basically I had gotten hired. And the job was, there had been a few rumors of the guy that was in my position was going to be leaving or something. And Dion reached out when he had finally left and said, hey, we have a job open, linebackers graduate assistant. So the same position I was in at Ohio University, but at Iowa State. And he said, would you be interested in it? And I was like, of course I would, and I interviewed on a Wednesday, and I got a call from Coach Campbell, who's the head coach, Matt Campbell, and he offered me the job on a Thursday morning. So that was how that happened. And, it happens quick as well. I got the job offer on a Thursday. I moved out of Athens on Friday, and then I was in Ames, Iowa that following Friday on Memorial Day weekend. So happened pretty quick, but then I've been at Iowa State since. It's been about 8 months or so. I got there early June. And just finished up my first season and just finished up a first recruiting cycle. So I guess here we are,
It's crazy. Like, a lot of the young coaches, this is what you have. Like you kind of bounce around for a little bit until you find that right fit. And it's not like you didn't like any of your other schools probably, but it was just like, opportunities present themselves. Like you went from a volunteer to now you're at a big time, like a big D1 school. It's crazy. And like the big thing that you talked about a lot in that is the connections that you have through Ohio Wesleyan. I'm not trying, I know we're both Ohio Wesleyan alums, and I'm not trying to push anybody one way or the other, but it's something like the connections that you build there. And I'm sure it's the same at other schools too, but like you build these connections, and it's important to build those connections because you never know where it might lead you.
No, you're exactly right. And that's something, I always kind of feel like I had been told that, my mom and my dad always said, it's all about knowing people and making friends and having good relationships and things like that. But you really don't, you don't expect it to really be as important as it is until sometimes it's too late. I feel like I was kind of fortunate where I was pushed to really network and talk to people and stuff. So maybe I was a little bit not ahead of the game, but like maybe on par with where I should have been, but nonetheless, like I said, every job I've had has been from an Ohio Wesleyan connection, so it is weird how that all happens and pans out. And there are other schools that have very similar, where they send a lot of coaches or, even players that played and want to get into coaching afterwards to schools, every year just based on good coaching connections that they've got. So it is crazy how it happens, but man, that's just the world, I guess,
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you see it at other schools, but I know like you've seen it at Ohio Wesleyan. I saw it. Like you have these coaches that come in, like I'm trying to think, Devin, Holiday, like all these other coaches.
Yeah.
They're only there
Yeah.
for a little bit of time, but it like, people are like, oh, they're only there and then they leave. But yeah, it's a big stepping stone. A lot of them go off to like big time schools, not like they don't like go to another D3 or another, like they go like to D1 coaching jobs and like build something for themselves.
Yeah, and just to speak on that, people that I know that have done that, the first guy I believe that I'm aware of was a guy by the name of Pat Embleton, who's an Ohio Wesleyan alum. And the only reason I really know him is because he recruited me. And that's what Ohio Wesleyan, the position that you can get at Ohio Wesleyan is so valuable because you're a young coach, but you get to coach your own position room. You get to go on the road. You get to go to high schools and meet coaches and talk to the players and the admission staff, or not the admission staff, I'm sorry, but the guidance counselors and things like that, building relationships, getting to do that. And that's very valuable. Where even at a GA spot that I'm in now, I don't have that opportunity. I think there's some certain things that could happen, and by NCAA rules I could, but the NCAA rules say that I'm not allowed to really go to high schools and things like that. So that's what Ohio Wesleyan can really help you out with. You know what I'm saying? And again, so Pat Embleton, he went from Ohio Wesleyan to Illinois. Devin Holiday did the same thing when I was there in 2018, I believe. And then Ike Reed went to where'd he go? He went to Buffalo.
Yep.
And then Rob Delaney, he went to Illinois as well. So 3 guys have gone to Illinois. 1 guy went to Buffalo. Dan Reinick is a guy who went to Ball State. After I left Ohio Wesleyan, I went to Ohio University. So that's actually, on the scale of those, probably which I guess is in the MAC as well with Reinick and Ike Reed. But nonetheless, that's been a lot of guys that have been there, done their year, done their 2 years, and moved on and are still doing well in the coaching profession.
Exactly. So one of the first things I want to talk about, because I forgot that you were from Worcester, was it kind of a weird thing going to Worcester when that's somebody that we play, or going to Ohio Wesleyan when that's somebody that we play?
Yeah, it is, and it was really strange just because I had a friend and his mom was the head basketball coach, women's basketball coach at Worcester, and we actually went and visited Ohio Wesleyan because his brother went there, and we committed to Ohio Wesleyan together, and we were going to play football, whatever, and then shortly thereafter, the College of Worcester, because they were in a new head coaching search. So the spring of my senior year of high school, they didn't really have anybody recruiting. I wasn't a big fan of staying home anyway, but nonetheless, they had gotten a coach, and my friend Kevin decommitted from Ohio Wesleyan and went to Worcester. So that was even more weird. You know what I'm saying? Like thinking about going to Worcester. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Oh, I'm going to go to Ohio Wesleyan with one of my best friends and play. Oh, no, wait, he's going to go to the College of Worcester now. So now I'm going to be playing against him. So it almost kind of brought like a cool, like little friend rivalry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was the same way. Actually, my best friend from high school, me and him went on like all of our recruiting visits together. Like we're looking at a lot of the same schools. I ended up choosing Ohio Wesleyan, and he ended up choosing Worcester, and we became like best friends to like not enemies, but in a way like you're playing against them. And I kind of in the same way, like I didn't want to stay home. I'm 15 minutes from Denison, which it's Denison, so I'm glad I didn't go there. But I could have been here and been home, but then I look at it, I'm like, I was 45 minutes away from home, which was perfect for me because like I was far enough away from home, but close enough to home that if I needed to get home, I could.
Yep, that's 100% right. And that was one of the things I was, attempting to do was go somewhere where I could also get home. And Ohio Wesleyan from Worcester is only about an hour and 15, an hour and a half. So that's not bad at all. But it was a cool experience, like I remember my senior year. So Keaton Leploms, another kid by the name of Zach Krofchak is from a high school in Wayne County, where Worcester's at, called Norwayne. So there was 4 or 5 of us from Wayne County that were all seniors when I was a senior in 2017, and they did like a little write-up in the paper in Worcester, and it was just like cool. There was some guys playing at Worcester and some guys playing at Ohio Wesleyan, so it was just a little competition, a little rivalry, and it was exciting to, and it was always the last game of the year. So that kind of added a little bit of pressure to win the last game.
Exactly. See, my last game of the year was, I don't even remember. It changed my junior year, but our last game of the year, my junior year, which I believe was your last year, or were you gone my sophomore?
Yep, your junior year, I believe. I was my last year was like the Twins and Flip and Gabe and Jax.
Yeah, that would have been my junior year.
Those guys, yep.
And we played Witt, which is even more of a big last game for us. But
yes, it is.
So, but your playing days, you had the long hair back then during your playing days, correct? Yeah, because I did, yeah. Remember when you came in? I didn't know you because you graduated in 2017 from Ohio Wesleyan, which was my senior year of high school. So I didn't really know you, but then you came back and like everybody knew you, and I was like, well, I mean, and then you learn who you are. But that was one of the things I wanted to ask too. Was it hard coming back to Ohio Wesleyan knowing a lot of the players and trying to coach them, or was that something like like a learning curve that you had to go through?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was hard. It was different. But I would say I was extremely lucky that I worked on the defensive line with Coach Cotter. He did a really good job of, you know, holding me to a high standard, and he also held, the players to a standard as far as, this is Coach Tomlin now, and we're all going to approach him that way and do things of that nature, and that helped me out a lot. But that was on top of as well Coach D and Coach Watts. They were kind of very hard on me, and they were, you can't be having fun, you can't be goofing around, you can't obviously go out and drink with anybody, you can't go to the bars, things like that. And they were very, very strict on me at that. And that was good for me, because it really kind of made me be more professional. I feel like, at a young age in this business, I had to be really professional because I was working with kids that I had been in college with for 2 years. They knew a different side of me. So I had to, help get that other side to show. And those guys really helped me with that. But it was a challenge. I don't think it was too hard, but it was a challenge for a little bit, I'd say.
Yeah, I think because I was on the other side of it where, I was roommates with Teddy my junior year. And then in my
Yeah.
senior year, he becomes a coach. And like, it's not like our relationship changed, but we both also had to realize like, all right, this, like, we can't be like we normally were. We have to change it a little bit just because like you don't want to get him in trouble. He can't, like, he's trying to avoid getting in trouble. And like, so you had to
Yeah.
be real different. Like it was a different relationship in a way.
Yeah. And like you could still, call him and text him and bull crap around and have fun and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But like, it's just like the same way when football is, like when you cross the line to go practice or to go play, it's, you clear your mind and you go do that. When it's time to go to work and stuff, you not there to have fun and be friends with Teddy. He's not there to, you know what I mean, be friends with you. He's there to coach you and make you a better football player.
That
And
was something that took me a second.
Set those boundaries.
Yeah, it took me a second because I'll never forget the first time he like got on my ass at lifting, and like I almost couldn't take him serious. But then like later that day, I was like, now that was like the coaching side of Teddy. That wasn't the like friend side. Like he wasn't being an asshole. He was like trying to be a coach, and I was like, that's where I think my like the light bulb went off in my head. Like, all right, this is a different. I gotta treat them different at certain times. But I wanted to ask you a little bit. So you were a volunteer at Miami of Ohio. What was that experience like, being a volunteer and basically going through the struggle that a lot of coaches start out like, where you're just grinding for like literally grinding just to try and build yourself?
Yeah, so that was a very big challenge. I was very, so a volunteer is, completely unpaid. I didn't get any housing paid for. I would get some meals during, fall camp and stuff like that. And I'd get a few meals during the week and obviously like game time meals. But that was it. And I was very fortunate to have two guys, two kind of mentors of mine, really helped me out. One guy gave me a small loan, so I didn't have to take it out of a bank, and take interest and all that sort of stuff. So I was fortunate to have somebody like that help me. And there was another guy that also helped me financially. So that made life a little easier. But I did, like, I was a bouncer at a bar on Thursday and Friday nights. If we had a home game, I would do it on Friday nights. If we were away, obviously we would be gone. But I did it on Thursday nights normally. And it was from about 9:30, 9 o'clock until 3:30 or something, right around there, whenever they closed up the place and, cleaned up everything. But it was a challenge, but it was something that I think was good for me because I really saw what like coaches do have to go through to get to where they want to be. And it's not everybody, is fortunate enough to start off in a really good spot. Now that wasn't even a bad spot. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying a paid position or something of that nature. But I really enjoyed it. Like the friends that I made there and the young coaches that I worked with, I still talk to the most to this day. Like there's a football coaches convention in this past time in early January. It was in San Antonio. And every night that I was, out having a few drinks with friends, it was always Miami guys, and that was, that means something to me as far as that means we built a pretty good friendship and we've got a good relationship and we're still building on that now.
Yeah. Would you almost like, maybe not recommend, but like if somebody had that opportunity where they didn't have anything, would you recommend like take the volunteer, like be willing to be a volunteer and do what you have to do because eventually your time might come?
Yeah, I definitely would. I mean, I would recommend it. Obviously, if you can get a paid position and it's somewhere you're comfortable with and things like that, then, that's probably a better option. But I will also say, I feel like in some regards, coaches are like, oh, like, they like, oh, you were at Miami, were you a GA there? And then, oh, I was just like, I think some coaches look at that and they're like, they kind of respect that in a way, he volunteered, he's done part of the stuff to pay his dues, and he's done this and that. And I think that kind of helps in some ways because they know that you're really in it for the right reasons, because if you're in it for money and stuff, that's what, I don't understand about some people that say, like, if you're in coaching, you're in it for the money or things like that. Just doesn't make sense to me because, like I said, I work for free. I mean, I've worked for $5,000 a year. I've worked for $8,000 a year. I've worked for almost nothing. So if you're in it for that, like, it's one of the worst jobs, I would say, to get in.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was, just very different in that regard. I would suggest it, but it's all different for everybody too. Everybody's path and everybody's journey to their ultimate head coach or coordinator or whatever is different for sure.
Talk about like what exactly, I feel like a lot of people don't understand, like if you come from a football, like college football, you kind of get it, but like tell people like what a GA does, because people think that like, they leave when the head coach leaves or the offensive coordinator. You guys are there a lot longer doing a lot more like practice film. Kind of just take us through like what exactly a GA does and how much work it does take.
So, it is a lot of work, and you definitely know that signing up for it. So it's one of those things where it's a double-edged sword. You're working really, really hard and a lot, but it's for a good reason and it's good. It's for a good cause. But nonetheless, so I mean, main responsibilities that I have. So I'll just speak as far as Iowa State, but like it's film breakdown. So we're getting ready to play an opponent. We've got to go through all of their games and break down the formations, the plays, the motions, everything down and distance, field position, all of that sort of stuff. And then we basically, we sit there and we watch the film and we go through it, and the coaches will ask, can somebody give me this information or that information, and you get on your computer and you find it and you give it to them and do things. And there are times when that's happening, I'll be in the meeting room, watching film with somebody, just going over some stuff, helping them out, helping them learn, whatever, helping them get ready for the next game. If it's a guy that's going to start or going to play a fair amount, things like that. And then, we have practice, and that's about 2 hours out of the day. So we have practice. And then after practice, we come in and I have to break down the practice film. So put in the formations, the plays, the down and distance, the motion, all that stuff. The same stuff I do for the game, I've got to do that for practice. And then we'll watch the practice as a staff again, go through that, see what we liked, see what we didn't like, see what corrections need to be made. And then from there, we would go to a position meeting. And this position meeting would start probably at 6 p.m. And our first meeting in the morning is at probably 7:15, a special teams meeting. I left that part out, but we started about 7:15. I get into work out earlier than that, but 7:15 is when we start. And then this position meeting at the tail end of the day is at 6 o'clock, 6:15. We have that for about 45 minutes. And then we have a special teams meeting for about 15 or 20 minutes. So it's, by the time that's all said and done, it's about 7:30, 7:45. And then we'll go back in again as a defensive staff, and the offensive staff will go with their guys, and they'll watch more film and keep game planning and scheming them up and figuring out what we can do, what we can't do. And generally, I would say, on average, we get out of there about 9 to 9:30. So it's about 7:15 to 9:30, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And I've been at places where, we've been there until, and this has happened at Iowa State as well, but I've been where I've, been there until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and then had to be back there at, 6:30 for a meeting, so it's one of those things that, it's going to be a lot. And I didn't mention throughout all of this, I've got class, so I've got homework to do. I've got projects. I've got papers to write. The work isn't super challenging, so I'm fortunate about that. I'm not going to, make it sound like it's super hard because it's not that difficult, but it is more stuff that I've got to do and stay on top of and know the due dates, you know what I mean? And make sure I don't lose track of that because, again, as a graduate assistant in school, so if I get below a 3.0, I'm on academic probation. And then if you're on academic probation, just like in an undergrad program for a semester, and then you say you do well, then obviously you're off of it. Or if you do poorly again, then you're going to be on, academic suspension or something rather. And then you've got literally that's your last semester to basically figure out your crap and get going. You know what I mean? Because then if you don't do well, then unfortunately you can get kicked out of the program, and that would result in losing your job in theory. You know what I'm saying? So that's a tough deal, but that's why you've got to be able to keep track of all that stuff because it is a lot.
I think one thing I feel like, I can't speak for you because I've never actually done it, but like one thing that probably helped being a student athlete, like a collegiate student athlete, like you kind of learn that time management. And that sounds like something that you really have to put into play a lot more than even in college. Like we had it in college, like, you have meetings, practice, and then you got to do homework, but now you got a lot more, I feel like, on your plate. So like, I feel like time management, being a student athlete helped teach you and prepare you for that. Would you say that it did?
Oh, 100%, 100%. But I think the difference is back in, in college and stuff, because life is a little easier then obviously, but it's, you got like, oh, in 30 minutes, I've got to do this, or I've got an hour, I feel like I'm breaking down time now, like by the minute, like I've got to get this done by 6:17 because I've got a meeting at 6:45 and I need to do this in between, you know what I'm saying? So I think I'm even more dialed into my time management, but it was 100% developed while being a student athlete because there is times during the season where you don't have time to mess around. And if you are late, there are consequences. So you don't want to be late. You don't want to experience that sort of stuff. So you've got to be able to figure out what you need and what you don't need. And that takes a little time too, it's experiencing classes and different professors and things where now I know this assignment's going to take me 30 minutes and maybe it's a weekly thing, or it's going to take me an hour and a half, so I've got to make sure I account for that probably the week before, the weekend before, as you're, getting yourself ready for the week, because again, when things are going to be, so you can help yourself out with your time, again, learning it early on as a student athlete, or even as a student. As a student, you can do the same thing. But yes, it definitely helped out a lot, and fortunate for that for sure.
How many different positions now have you coached?
I have coached. So I didn't mention this, but this is actually pretty strange. When I was at Miami, I was actually a volunteer. I was a graduate intern with the quarterbacks. So that was kind of strange.
And you played linebacker in college, correct?
Yes. Never really never liked quarterbacks, honestly. So that was very strange going to coach quarterbacks. And then I was with the defensive line at Ohio Wesleyan and linebackers since then. So linebackers, defensive line, and I guess quarterbacks. Yeah.
I'm sure quarterback was definitely a way different shift because like you're coming from the defensive side of the ball, trying to learn like the offensive side of things. And then, but I feel like, was linebacker to D line a difficult kind of like learning shift, or was it, especially at Ohio Wesleyan, you already knew the play calls. You knew what was going on, but was it kind of a little bit more to get used to than you kind of expected, or was it just basically a breeze?
No, it was definitely that part was challenging. I don't have best football like, but that was a challenge at the beginning, but it as a whole, and that's what as me, I would like to be a head coach one day, and that's going to mean I'm going to need to be a coordinator probably beforehand. So knowing how the whole defense operates and how all pieces are string together and one follows the other, et cetera, all of that helped me out tremendously because I did learn a lot more verbiage and terminology and techniques and how people do things to help make your players better and set them up for more success, which also leads into linebacker because some things that they do that help them will help us in the long run, but we just got to understand what they're doing to know how it's helping us. A lot of kids nowadays ask the whole why and why this and why that. And that's such a good thing, I think, because they're trying to really understand it. Where when I was in college, I really was just focused on what the Sam and the Will linebacker did. I don't think I was really smart enough or could think enough about what everybody was doing. I needed to know exactly what I was doing, you know what I'm saying, and dial in on that. But it has helped out a lot. The quarterback transition was very challenging, to be honest with you. I didn't really know what I was getting into when I went to Miami. Obviously, I wasn't a part of a Division I program at Ohio Wesleyan. So it was very different in that regard. But I learned how, at least quarterbacks in Miami and quarterbacks some other places probably read defenses and what do they look at to figure out what coverage they're in or to see if somebody's blitzing or things of that nature. And that helps out as a defensive coach, because then what guys to make sure that they look the same so the offense doesn't get a tell or get a read on what you may be doing defensively.
Some of that I bet you wish you knew in college too.
Oh, 100%, man. Like I really wish when I played, like I would have taken a better understanding or tried to at least learn what the D-line was doing, or at least the safeties behind me, and like I wish that would have helped me out a lot more, I think. And it would have helped me out obviously a lot more as a coach because I would have had a better understanding of everything going on. But I just, as a player, I thought a lot. I was a thinker. I was just always worried about thinking and didn't want to mess anything up. And then kind of held me back, I would say, early on in college as a freshman and sophomore a little bit. I played and everything, but not as much as I think I could have. And then as I got older, I feel like I was just kind of like, I cared less because I was like, man, screw it. I've got 2 years left or I've got 1 year left. Like, you know what I mean? And then I ended up being a much better player and it helped me out a lot more in the long run.
Yeah, I looked like when I played safety and then got that my junior year, made that shift to corner for that one season. I didn't realize how much knowing what the safeties were doing behind me helped me because I definitely was not the best corner. I'm not a natural corner, but then like just knowing what was going on behind me and trusting we had some pretty good safeties back behind me, so that helped, but like just knowing and trusting them and just it helped me at corner a lot. And I'm sure that's kind of like the same with linebacker and D-line because I feel like, you got the linebackers and D-line, you got that front seven, and then you got the back half. They're almost two different scales. Like the safeties don't necessarily need to know what the D-line's doing. More so the linebackers, but like, you kind of look, but it all works as a one big piece in a way.
Yeah, it definitely does. And that's a good example that you had, because in some scenarios, it's as a corner, what you've got behind you, because then you can take a chance on a ball or take a chance on a cut or something and try to make a play because you've got help. And that's one thing that I've learned at Iowa State a ton. And the guy that I work for, specifically Tyson Vite, who was actually a head coach at Bluffton University until 2014, I believe, and then went to Toledo with the guys at Iowa State, and then they all went to Iowa State together. But Coach Vite does an unbelievable job at helping the linebackers understand where their help is. And that's something that I don't think that I've always understood completely, and how to teach my guys that while also teaching them what they need to know, if that makes sense. And I can do this because I've got help here, so I can do this instead, and that's something that is very valuable. And I've learned that a lot while being at Iowa State. And if I would have known that as a player, it definitely would have made life easier. But, neither here nor there. Now I've learned it. I guess better late than never, they say.
I wanted to ask too, like one of the things you kind of look, because you've been, around D1 programs. You said you were at Wayne State, so that's a D2 program, D3.
Yep.
Is there a difference in like practice speed and like just how things are done at each level?
There's definitely a difference in how things are done. Like the biggest difference is the coaching staff and the personnel. There's a lot of people on the practice field at Iowa State, like more than I can even describe. There's obviously the team and the coaches and the GAs, but there's people standing all over the sidelines. There's equipment guys, there's strength and conditioning guys, there's recruiting, the recruiting department, the operations department is down there. So there's just so many more people all programs do the same stuff. They all recruit, they all have a season training, they all have summer training, all at each level.
Today's episode is brought to you by roughneckspodcast.com. If you want to support the podcast, then head over to roughneckspodcast.com and grab you some of that Roughnecks merch. We have everything from t-shirts, long sleeves, sweatshirts, hats, and many more. Stay up to date on the website for new merch coming every couple months. You can place an order and it'll get sent directly to your door, and I don't even take any of the money from it. The money gets put right back into the podcast to continue to improve it for you. If you can't afford to buy some merch this time, then simply just subscribe to the newsletter, and it'll keep you up to date on all the new things that are coming. I appreciate all of the support you guys give. It doesn't go unnoticed. Let's get back to today's episode.
So at Ohio Wesleyan, you've got your 8 coaches, and they've got to do everything: recruiting, equipment room, operations, game day management, all of that sort of stuff. And, at Iowa State, we've got people that do all of that in all different regards. My job and the football coach's job is obviously they do recruiting and stuff, but, we're the football coaches. We don't, worry about setting up hotels for away games or getting buses or, making sure the stuff's out for practice. You know what I'm saying? And that goes the same as Division II. They've got a little bit more than Division III, but just a little bit less than Division I. And there's even a difference between, Power 5 as far as, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, Pac-12, ACC, and the group of 5 schools like the MAC and the Sun Belt and all of those conferences. But that's the biggest difference, is really just the amount of people that you've got.
What is if you could give like one piece of advice to a young coach, what would it be?
I would say you've got to be willing to take a chance. There's going to be a time in your coaching career, in your time of doing this, where you're going to be like, man, I don't know if I should do this. It's not the best. Maybe it's not the best. You're not making the most money, or you're not getting meals or something of that nature. You're far away from home, but you're going to have to take a chance and to just understand that part of that chance is what's going to happen afterwards. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is something to look forward to. So be willing to take a chance. And in the midst of taking a chance, go in with both feet. Don't just tiptoe and dive in head first and really figure it out and go on.
See, yeah, like you said, if you just kind of tiptoe into it, or if you don't take that chance, like if you would have never took that chance to Miami, there's no saying that you'd be where you are right now, like at Iowa State. So like it's one of those that you never know where it's going to lead unless you take that chance, unless you just decide, because like you said, you were a volunteer doing it and you had to like scrape by, but it led you to different, like to more things, and it built more connections. And like you're at that coaching conference, you're still in contact with those people, and there's no saying what it might lead to later in life for you. If you don't take that chance, you never know where you're going to end up.
That's 100% true. And it is hard, and it's not always the easiest thing, even taking this chance. And then I moved, my family, and there's a lot, but you just got to be willing to take that chance, and it's going to be worth it. And you can make it even more worth it if you do go in, head first, and you take all of the risk, and you take it all, and you make the best of it.
That I like that you said make the best of it, because if you go in, like if you would go in and just be like, all right, I'm just gonna, it's almost like what they always used to tell us in practice: if you go through the motions and just do what you got to do, you're not gonna
100%.
improve, you're not gonna keep growing. If you got to go in like wanting to learn, and this is with anything in life, it's not just like your coaching career, it's no matter what you do, no matter what job, if you get an internship in college, whatever it is, go in wanting to learn and showing them that you want to learn, because that'll help you in the future.
Yep. And be willing. And, that's one thing too, is be willing to do whatever it takes. As far as taking a chance, there's, I've done like the most random jobs ever. I've, swept floors for recruiting events, mop floors, done all sorts of random things. And there's no job that's too big nor too small, no matter if you're at a Division III program or you're at, one of the biggest Power 5 programs you can be at. You've got to be willing to do it all and to take those chances. And when somebody else isn't going to do it, you can be the person to step up and do it. And that can be a challenge, because people be like, oh, he's such a try hard, or he's doing this or doing that. And peer pressure is a real thing. And and that can affect you. But again, you just got to be willing to take that chance and do what you know is the right thing and going to help not just you in your endeavors for what's next, but the program that you're at, because when you're there, possible to not only win games, but to also become better men as well.
Exactly. So I want to move into some of the final stuff that we talk about on this podcast. And like one of the questions I actually forgot to ask it last week with Ellie, and I've asked, I don't know how it's been almost a year that I've asked people this. I implemented it in and can't believe I forgot it, but it was first guest and over since 2021. But my one question I like to ask all my guests is if you could go back in time and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
I would probably say that kind of lead into, what I was going to do for motivation, but, just, you got to keep on going. When things seem off kilter, you got to keep going. Things are going to happen that you're not expecting, and life is crazy, but you just got to keep going no matter what. You just got to keep on going. There was a movie I remember, I don't remember what movie it was, and I feel like it was even maybe like a Disney movie, but it's probably in more than one movie, of course, but the person in the movie was just saying something, and they phrased it at one point is, you got to keep on keeping on, and sometimes that's all you can do, and that's what you got to do, but you just got to keep on keeping on and keep moving forward.
No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
That's Joe Dirt right there. That's a Joe Dirt quote.
Is that what it is?
Oh, yeah. I actually kind of just spoke on that last episode a little bit, I believe, or maybe it wasn't last episode, a few episodes ago.
Well, then that's even better than Joe Dirt.
Life's garden, you got to dig it or something. Like I always mess it up. I don't know what the exact quote is. What am I supposed to do? Quit? Just got to keep on keeping on.
Yep.
But I think that leads us perfectly into the next segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I allow the guests to give the Roughnecks listeners a little inspirational bump to set the tone for their week as they listen on Monday morning. So what do you got from Motivation Monday, Mason?
So for Motivation Monday, like I just kind of hit on, life is crazy. Life isn't always fair, but you just got to keep going. You got to keep on working through all the trouble, all the adversity, all the good things, all the great things, and you just got to keep on going. Time doesn't slow down for anybody, doesn't stop for anybody. So you've just got to keep going. You've got to find a way, whatever it takes, make it happen, make it work, and just keep going. It's not always going to be easy, and most of the time it's not going to be easy, but find a way. And again, if there's light at the end of the tunnel, it'll be worth it, but you just got to keep on going.
It's not always going to be easy, like you said. And if it's easy, then I feel like that means you're staying in your comfort zone and you're not growing. You're just kind of staying where you are. You're content with where you're at. You're not improving yourself. And so that if it is easy, it should never be easy. It's not life, and life's never going to be easy for us. It sucks. Sometimes we wish it was. I could attest to that right now, but it's not always going to be easy, and that's okay. Just use those hard times as learning experiences. Use those hard times to grow.
That's right. And just keep on going, keep on growing, keep on developing, keep on learning, just keep on doing everything. And you hit the nail on the head, Cole.
And with that, I think we're going to wrap up this episode. Oh, before we wrap up this episode, I forgot. I asked all of my guests now to give me a question for Q&A Friday. And what Q&A Friday is every 10 episodes, me and probably a guest will answer questions, any type of questions. It could be literally about anything. And actually, the guest for this Q&A Friday, so I'm going to ask you to give me a question, but the guest for this Q&A Friday is actually Beachy. So it's going to be me and Beachy answering questions.
Okay.
So give me whatever question you got.
Whatever question I got. All right, this will be I think this one will hit a little bit home, but I think it'll be a good one. So through the toughest times of your life, what was one of the most important things that you could rely on to keep going forward?
Ooh, I like
Think
that
of one of the top toughest parts of your life. What was something that you could hang your hat on and keep pushing forward and make it through?
Ooh, that is that's going to be a tough one to answer too. But that's a really good question to actually, like, I feel like everybody should kind of think about, because that's it just going off what we just said. You look at those tough times, and like sometimes we don't realize how much those tough times mean to us until like later in life, and then like we're like, oh, that prepared me for this or whatever. But that's a really good one.
Yep. And sometimes unfortunately, you forget what, helps you get through times like that. And those are things that I feel like maybe you shouldn't forget, and you should want to keep them keep them in your back pocket.
Exactly. And with that, that's a wrap on the 77th episode of the Roughnecks podcast. Thank you so much, Mason, for coming on. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to following you through your coaching career.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you very much for having me, man. This was a blast. Hope some people can get some stuff from it, man. Thanks again, Cole. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. We will be back this Friday, with Fast Friday number 3. But until next time, you guys know the deal. Life is hard, and it's going to knock us down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let the bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Roughnecks, out. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks podcast. If you like today's episode, then be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with a friend if you got some value from it. Head over to social media and follow the Roughnecks podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Don't forget to get you some of that merch by heading over to roughneckspodcast.com and subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. See y'all next week. Roughnecks, out.